Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. These episodes were originally aired on Brookings Radio. Now they're on the net for you.
Hey, if you want to hear anything special on the show, reach out to us on Facebook. We're always looking for new content. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Industry watchers have been speculating on the future of craft beer in America. The larger craft brewers have not been growing the last few years. A few have even seen production decline because of lessening demand. However, the number of breweries in the country continues to grow, now approaching 7,400. And overall market share for craft beer went up last year. Independent craft beer grew 4%. It now makes up just over 13% of all the beer sold in America. The dollar share of craft beer even better. It accounts for nearly 1/4 of all the money spent on beer in the U.S. Seth Cook with Wooden Legs Brewing of Brookings.
Don't take our word for it. This is from the Brewers Association. The Brewers Association is a professional organization that the brewers can choose to be a participant of. They do focus on craft beer, and their definition of craft beer is small and independent. The largest brewery in terms of volume in their stable, in their inventory, in their membership is Sam Adams.
Actually, it's Yuengling.
Oh, is it Yuenglings now? Yeah. Okay. So those are the big ones. Yuengling and Boston Beer Company would be the big ones, and then of course everybody underneath, all the way down. So the numbers that we're going to talk through are generated and canvassed by the Brewers Association, and it's fair to say that craft beer has continued to grow. Pretty much nationwide and even worldwide, has continued to grow. But beer itself, as the beverage of choice, has still declined. So the pie has gotten a little bit smaller for brewers in the world, but the craft slice still gets bigger.
Overall, the beer market last year was down 1%. Craft beer grew 4% in barrelage. It's 13.2% of the overall beer market. But the dollar value of craft beer sold is 24% of the entire beer market.
And I don't think that's probably too big of a surprise to a lot of people. Craft beer usually specializes in beers that are not sold at volume in 30 packs. Craft beer usually...
They're more expensive.
More expensive, and they usually have more components, more alcohol to them. They're usually smaller, so they don't get the economies of scale. But I guess it is kind of interesting that still only 12 out of 100 beers sold in the U.S. are considered craft beers, and it becomes really.
But it's 1/4 of the cost of the dollar spent on beer.
Yeah, $1 out of $4.
More Beer Untapped with Perry Miller is on the way. Welcome back to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller as we discuss the continued growth of craft beer. Craft beer grew 4% in the U.S. last year. This while the overall beer market was shrinking. A large part of the reason for that, the increasing popularity of small local breweries and brew pubs. Very small breweries accounted for 80% of the growth in craft beer last year. Seth Cook is co-owner of Wooden Legs Brewing of Brookings.
The breweries of Brookings County definitely fit into the very small category. Actually, all
the breweries of South Dakota all fit
into the very small microbrewery. And so what we're doing here in Brookings and what Brookings has is really similar to what you can find in a lot of communities. And I think that's what's kind of cool about the craft beer scene is when you travel and when you go out, you'll find many breweries like Wooden Legs Brewing Company that have started with a small dream and wanting to do this. And we've all kind of followed our own path, but have as a collective, as a industry, really started to make an impact of one tap room at a time.
And it's interesting because in 2018, the regional breweries, the regional craft breweries, those bigger ones, the Deschutes, the Odell, the brewers like that, Sierra Nevada, Sam Adams, static. And some even went down a little.
Right. And it's a tough market for those. I mean, forgive the term, but it's probably a saturated market for some of those. Doesn't mean there's not a spot for a good local brewery or a microbrewery, which is a benefit to a consumer. Right now, the consumer is in the heyday of the craft brewing industry. You can get in your local gas station or your local liquor store or your local beer bar, you can get a selection that is just mind-numbing how wide and how deep and how far you can get fantastic beer from.
And it's obvious people want not just local, they want hyper-local, and they want it from the brewery down the street.
And I think that's where the entire industry is heading. I think the breweries that are hyper-local will do well and will continue to do well.
That's it for this week's show. Until next time, drink local and drink responsibly. Thank you for listening to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Originally aired on Brookings radio stations K Country 102.3, The Hawk 107.1, and B93, and now here for your listening enjoyment as well. If you want to hear it live, it's every Wednesday and Saturday on those 3 stations.
And of course, if you're not in the Brookings area to hear it live, you can find us on the internet on your favorite podcast player. If you like this show, make sure to rate and review, or maybe even tell your friends.